There, look at his right hand. Zoom in. Nothing. It's 1995 and casino security are checking camera footage in a dingy back room. They've lost more than $500,000 to casino cheats this month alone, but they don't know how.
I was put on this planet to beat these casinos. End of story.
This guy has won $25,000 in the last hour. Recognising his face, he's dragged into a nearby back room. They're convinced he's cheating, but they need evidence to prove it.
It was so thoroughly prepared and researched and set up that the whole scam was perfect down to a T.
The race is on. If they don't find something soon, he'll never get caught. It's the summer of '76 and a giddy 21-year-old has arrived in Vegas. He's got a case jammed full of $100 bills. After winning $30,000 on a trifecta at the racecourse, he fancies his chances. To the untrained eye, he looks like a high roller, but it couldn't be further from the truth. In less than a week, he's lost the lot. Without any options left, he's homeless and living underneath a small bridge overpass on the outskirts of Las Vegas. It's a rude awakening. Depressed, skint and hungry, he bluffs his way into a job at the Four Queens Casino on Fremont Street. It's desperate stuff, but he's looking for ways to beat the house. A month or so into dealing cards, a sharply dressed character approaches him as he finishes work. He has a compelling proposition. Known as Mr. C, Richard decides to trust this man. After all, he's stone broke with nothing to lose. A couple of nights later, one of Mr. C's partners is playing at his table. Under his mentor's instruction, he turns a blind eye to this player's right hand. In truth, he might not have noticed it anyway. Between them, they successfully scam the house for a little over $21,000 that night. His cut of the proceeds have got him out of a hole, and now he's curious about the technique that was being used at his table. It's how he first discovers late betting. But this is just the start. You see, late betting is one of the easiest ways to cheat your way to riches. Put simply, it's making a bet after the outcome of the event. It works best as a team of 3, although cheaters sometimes do it in groups of 4 and 5. Typically, there will be 2 players at the table and a spotter assessing the overall situation off to the side. When the spotter decides the time is right and the casino security is laxed, he gives the nod to player 1. This player is the most important of all. Whilst acting like a drunken beginner, they're responsible for placing an initial low-stakes bet. If the bet loses, they do nothing. The money's lost and they continue at the table. However, if the bet is a winner, both player 1 and player 2 spring into action. Once the wager's outcome is known, for example as a ball settles in roulette, player 1 switches their initial stack of chips with some cunning sleight of hand. For example, a stack of 4 $25 chips might be switched for 3 $500 chips and a $25 chip on top. At a glance, they look similar, but when it comes to getting paid, there's a $1,450 difference. Following the switch, player 1 leaves the table and player 2 immediately steps into their position, discreetly stacking a pile of $500 chips on the table in front of them. This sequence is designed to confuse the dealer or croupier who is focused on the game at hand. They now have a new face at the table with a considerable stack of chips in front of them, so when player 2 says that they were paid wrong, the croupier thinks they made a mistake. I mean, why would a high roller with a stack of $500 chips be playing for $25? Especially when several of the chips on the table are worth $500. To add some pressure to this sequence, Mr. C tells Richard to touch the croupier's hand whilst complaining. It's a high pressure move coupled with an overload of information. It might seem ridiculous, but in a busy casino with players coming and going so frequently, it's effective if you get it right. Now, Richard is ready for his first real world move on the other side of the table. For his initiation, he'll be taking the role of player 2, claiming he's been paid wrong. From a distance, he watches his spotter give player 1 the nod. It's a winning bet and the switch is on. The nervous youngster swaps places with player 1 at the busy roulette table, quietly placing his stack of $500 chips in front of him. "Hey, you paid me wrong." He clutches at the croupier's wrist. It's an overreaction and the whole incident comes across pretty aggressive. Stunned, the croupier appears perplexed, paying out instantly. It's a mistake, but he's relieved having successfully cheated the house. Going forward, he needs to avoid being so heavy-handed. It's the kind of thing that will get him remembered. He doesn't want to become the mob's next mark, Stealing money from crooks is dangerous business. In the late 70s and early 80s, being caught cheating in the wrong Vegas casino could mean a brutal end. It's the early 80s now, and Marcus is making big money consistently. He's become a little arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable. But reality is about to kick him into touch. After making a few late bets, he's pulled aside by security. They claim they've caught him cheating and bundle him into a back room. Forced onto a chair, he's confronted by staff from Griffin Investigations. Griffin are the most prominent group of private investigators in Vegas gambling. Inside, he's panicking big time. But on the outside, he's calm and collected. He's already prepared for this moment. No comment. After an hour of high-pressure intimidation tactics, it appears they don't have any evidence that Marcus has been cheating. They're clearly pissed off, but there's nothing else they can do legally. They let him go. But now, his cards are marked. It's a risky episode that sees some of the team retire. Those who wish to continue must react immediately, and so Marcus takes charge, adjusting their strategy in the process. The major changes are twofold. First, they cease all activity within the Vegas area. Several trips to casinos in Monte Carlo and London are planned over the next few years. It'll allow Vegas heat to subside. And second, they double down on some surveillance of their own. Much like those greedy pit bosses, they know that knowledge is power. They study the casinos, the croupiers, who's hot, who's soft, their individual traits, shift patterns, everything. It's an elaborate turning point that changes the game. Subsequently, they bank nearly $3 million the following year. But it's not nearly enough. Early in 1994, Rich is on the hunt for new team members that are willing to make big moves and, more importantly, team members he can trust. Purely by chance, he bumps into an old friend, Mark Abramovitz. He's a relentless gambler that knows the casinos well. Better still, he's reliable. He shares his grand plans with Abramovitz, who contacts another old friend of his, Pat Mallory. It's a crucial connection because Mallory is unlike anyone else on the team. Crazy, confident, and extremely charismatic. He has the allure of a high roller. This is the perfect person to step in after a high stakes chip switch. With a little training, he believes he's created the perfect team of misfits. It's time to put them to the test.
He took over the casino. It was a beautiful thing. It was beautiful.
With a few drinks to calm his nerves, Pat and the team are ready to go. Their aim is to start small and then eventually work up to switches with Caesar's $5,000 chips. It's a bold plan because at this point it's never been done at such high stakes. They walk into Caesar's and assume their positions. When the time is right, Marcus gives them the nod. But in a last minute twist, a tipsy Pat Mallory decides to go for the big money chips. The bet is placed. The ball lands. The switch is swift, although a little clumsy. Boom. No one even noticed. Pat's booze-induced punt sets the duo off to a night of high-stakes cheating. Later, it's claimed that they banked $100,000 that night alone. The morning after, they emerge a little hungover. The group decide that, on reflection, they went a little too hard. Nobody wants to be dragged into a back room by casino security again. Reducing their average stakes, the team steal hundreds of thousands of dollars over the following 6 months. And then, suddenly, things turn sour one night. As Pat is being paid out on a $10,000 bet, an angry-looking pit boss barges in on the action. He halts the exchange, calling other staff members over his radio. Nobody knows what's going on. Amongst the commotion, Pat slips into a nearby restroom to tear off his clothes. This time, the team are prepared for every eventuality. Pat's wearing a second set of lightweight clothes underneath his high roller suit. Sweating profusely, he leaves the restroom in a hurry. With security staff searching for a suited man nearby, it's a near miss. But the team know the casino's camera operators will eventually work it out. They need to adapt and fast, because time is running out. Marcus and Mallory are discussing their problem in a strip joint shortly after. They're already filthy rich, but they haven't any intention of stopping. Marcus has a soft spot for one of the girls, Savannah. He drops her a $100 tip, and that is when it hits him. What if they switch up their existing move? It will help them beat the cameras. Surveillance technology is their biggest problem. With hundreds of cameras in every casino recording every table, they know that the casino staff are looking for players that swap out winning chips. Instead of swapping out the winners, they need to find a way of swapping out the losers instead. Nobody is watching the losers. Formulating the correct execution will be crucial if this is to work. The pair spend hours trying new ideas, although, as usual, the best idea is simple. They create a technique that allows them to place multiple chips on the table in such a way that it creates an illusion. The plan is to place high stakes bets straight out of the gate. For example, a stack of 3 chips might include 2 $1,000 chips at the bottom and a $25 chip on top. The top chip in the stack of 3 needs to be slightly closer to the croupier than the bottom 2. At a glance between bets, the croupier will notice the top chip worth $25. If the bet loses, they make the switch for 3 $25 chips whilst playing drunk and dumb much like before. Worst case, if the croupier pulls them up for touching the chips, they would apologise and put down the lower value stack. Calling security every time someone touched a $25 chip would be ridiculous. Plus, they've tweaked how they operate. One team member will now be a caller next to the roulette wheel. When a switch is needed, they'll create a distraction that also acts as a signal for the chip switcher. However, if the bet wins, they simply let it ride. The beauty of this is threefold. 1. Croupiers are less suspicious if you touch them losing chips. 2. If the bet wins, there's no cheating. 3. Those reviewing CCTV footage afterwards wouldn't see anything because they'd be looking for the wrong thing altogether. There's literally no risk. It's genius. The only problem is if the croupier notices the initial bottom chip's placement. It doesn't take long before the duo are wondering, how scalable is this strategy? Can they make more money than before using it? It's time to find out. Wasting no time at all, they hit up Caesar's roulette wheel. And they're so confident they start off with $5,000 chips this time. Marcus can't believe it. Lady Luck is on their side. He doesn't even need to make a switch for the first few bets. Mallory has assumed their new position as caller. They've agreed that he will yell, "Damn it," and cause a commotion when a switch is required. Once again, they're not even questioned. Their first night using the Savannah move is a roaring success. The pair know that this is a rare and unique opportunity, having created this new move unlike the past where they're going to make full use of it. Immediately, they bring in Abramovitz and explain. He loves it. For the following 4 months, this trio rinsed the casinos night after night. Meanwhile, casino security teams and Griffin Book investigators are in a serious fluster. They know they're being cheated out of more than $500,000 per month, but they haven't got a clue how. Trawling hours and hours of CCTV footage at a time, they see nothing. And by the end of 1995, the casinos are getting desperate. The grumpy pit boss arrives at a roulette wheel where Marcus is playing. The croupier tells the pit boss that this guy is winning big, but he never noticed the $5,000 chips before. Instantly, Marcus is dragged into a side room. He's been here before, and he doesn't like it one bit. He knows that the team have taken several million from the Vegas Strip in the last couple of months. The stakes are high, and this is dangerous. They rough him up a little, but he doesn't comment. They go to review the tapes, so he waits. After several hours, he doesn't know if he should laugh or cry. Back in the control room, they're reviewing his winning bets over and over again. They can't work it out. Little do they know, Marcus didn't switch anything. He didn't need to, because it wasn't a losing hand. Bemused, they return.
You're free to go, but we don't want to see you in here again.
He tries not to laugh. The house is powerless. In the following months, casinos flip tactics. When they suspect someone using the Savannah move, they refuse to pay. It's risky, but a real gambler always complains when they've been shortchanged. Always. Cheaters, however, will walk away. They don't want to give up their identity. For 5 more years, Richard Marcus claims that they worked the Savannah move around the globe, banking around $30 million in the process. He was never charged with a crime in 25 years, and he claims to have stopped. Although you have to ask yourself, would you?